I'm Dr. Fara Kamangar with the SF Derm Eczema Symposium and 100-year celebration. We're here with Dr. Ekama Carlson. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm going to read your full-on bio. That's what happens.
Go for it. Happy
because
to be
you're
here.
very impressive. Dr. Ekama Carlson, MD, PhD, is a double board-certified dermatologic surgeon and renowned expert in Mohs and advanced reconstructive surgery. She is in private practice at the California Center for Dermatologic Surgery in San Francisco, where she is founder and medical director. Thank you for being on a podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons, actually, which is right in your bio, one of the main reasons I think was so important to have you is because you went and did the thing that everyone says you can't do now, and that is go out, start a private practice, a very successful private practice, reach success in a very short amount of time, a high level of success, and you're just running it amazingly. And I think it's sort of thought about now that most dermatology residents that come out of residency, come out of fellowship, just go and join a big group, as I have, because I took the known route.
As did I initially.
Yeah. And it's basically this sort of like fear, whatever it is. It's just this sort of trend that's just what you do. But every once in a while, somebody really brave and innovative does something different. And it like usually works out probably likely. So I just wanted you to talk to us about that, how you did it. And so feel free to start anywhere you like in that journey, all the way from the beginning and what led to it, or just that opening the practice, wherever you like.
Yeah, no, certainly. So, I mean, you brought up a good point. As we talked about earlier, I mean, most of us, like recent grads, I'm 6 years, this is my 6th year out of fellowship, especially in Northern California, you have major academic centers, you have major hospital groups, multidisciplinary hospital groups, like PAMP is one, yeah. Kaiser is one. And there's so many large organizations that are ready to take on new grads. They have competitive salaries. If you are a dermatologic subspecialist, like a Mohs surgeon or dermpath, there's like a ready source of referrals for you that you don't necessarily have to work for. So that's very attractive to a new grad. I think most of us fall into that category. It's really expensive to live in the Bay Area. You have medical school debt and, like all the debt you've accumulated over the course of your training. And on one hand, there's like an already made practice that maybe may not have all the things that it doesn't check all your boxes, but it's good enough. And sometimes it's actually even great. And so I think that's one advantage of being where we are in the Bay Area. There are a number of different job opportunities for a new grad. So I definitely did that. I read out of fellowship. So I did my fellowship in Mohs surgery at UCSF. And I had a kid during residency. My husband he's a biotech, at least at the time he was in biotech. And we have family in the Bay Area. So we wanted to stay. It's definitely an advantage living close to your family that can help with your kid. And we're like, okay, we want to be in the Bay Area. And when I looked at the job opportunities, sure, there was some private practice. There was academia. There was mostly VA rather than academia, so VA. So affiliated with the university, but not quite like full faculty at a university. And then there was Kaiser, there was PAMF. And I remember at the time, I was like, well, I want to be in San Francisco and I want to just do Mohs. I don't want to have to build a practice because it just seemed scary at the time. There's a lot of unknowns.
Fear.
There's a fear. We don't really get that much education in business and medicine, in residency or in medical school. So there's just that fear, and also you're worried about making a living. So I did look into a couple of private practice opportunities, went to a few of the local Mohs surgeons and said, hey, do you need a partner? And I think just the way the referral patterns are based in San Francisco, some of them did, but they didn't have enough volume for another Mohs surgeon. So I would have had to build up that practice volume and do a lot more general derm, which I'm doing now. But at the time I was like, well, I have all this training behind me. I just want to get out there and just do as much Mohs as possible and not get too comfortable and just, like be innovative. And so that was the appeal with joining a large group practice. There were a large number, like you can do Mohs every day if you want. My department chief at the time was like, you can be the queen of Mohs if you want.
That's attractive.
I was like, yes, I'll take that.
Attractive.
I was like, okay, I get to do those every day. I loved general derm, but I think when you spend a year just learning and trying to perfect the craft, there's this need to want to do more of that.
That's true. You want to just improve that craft too.
Exactly.
And you need to do a lot of cases to get to that point.
Exactly. And also even before that, during fellowship, you start out with the attending doing a lot of the cases and teaching you. Yeah. So there's a lot of like theoretical knowledge, and over time you get that practical knowledge, but it doesn't feel as natural as doing it on your own, right? And so I had that need to want to do that. And so that's why I took the Kaiser job. It was a great job. I worked across the bridge in Marin, lived in San Francisco still. And, at the time that was great. I had good work-life balance. I had the variation in the types of cases, like really complex cases, easy cases, mostly complex cases. But then I got really comfortable handling those cases. And so that really just met all my needs. At some point though, so about 5 years in, before then, about 3 years in, right before the pandemic hit, I started feeling just like a need for more autonomy, more independence, being able to train medical assistants the way I wanted. There was a lot of staff turnover, a lot of, if you needed vacation, you had to request like a year in advance. If my kid had a show at school, and the schools are not very good at like giving you such advance notice. They tell you like, I don't know, like a week before, like a random Thursday afternoon, like I'm a working parent, right? So things like that, I found I was missing my kids' school plays, and just wanting a little bit more independence and wanting a little more autonomy. So I think that's where that started. The practice itself was still fine. I mean, I enjoyed my patients a lot. I enjoyed the work I was doing. I just felt like I needed more control. So around that time, I started looking into private practice options. We looked around for spaces in San Francisco, tried to decide if I wanted to work in Marin or work in San Francisco. I'd already worked in Marin. I was familiar with that patient population. Right. They're older, they're fairer skinned, and so a lot of skin cancer. It just felt like a natural sort of progression as to what I wanted to do. But then I also had mentors. My mentors at UCSF were like, just start in SF. Like, why start in Marin? Like
you live there, it's closer.
You live here. There were quite a few Mohs surgeons at the time, but one of my mentors was like, they're going to be retiring soon. You don't have to go elsewhere to start Mohs. You can do it here in the city. We'll support you. Yeah, so I think just having that mentor, like good mentors that sort of are in your ear, and it sort of feeds your confidence when you have a lot of doubt, right? So that was my first thing. This was about 3 years in. And of course, I looked into some venues, buildings, medical buildings, like potential clinic spaces. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And then I was like, oh, it's actually a great time to be employed, right?
Yes, that's right. It was a time of uncertainty. So you're like, well, I'm going to stay in the most certain situation, right. Which is probably why we choose these situations out of residency, because the certainty.
Certainty and stability, right?
Yeah.
You're not worried about like people were not leaving their homes, right? And if you were, at Kaiser, were salaried employees. And if you were salaried, I mean, yes, we had to sort of like change our workflows. I had to volunteer to do some telederm, for example, but I was fine doing that. I mean, there was that stability. You're still getting income coming in. And so that was the attraction. At that point, I was like, oh, it's actually a good thing to be employed. And so I sort of like put private practice on the back burner for a little bit. And then during the pandemic, got pregnant again. It was a planned pregnancy. Got pregnant again. And then took some time off, maternity leave. And then when I went back, I mean, I don't know if you have this in your practice, but there's just been a lot of changes since COVID. A lot more staff turnover.
Yes.
Being really short-staffed.
Yep.
And so, with supply chain shortages, you'd order something and it wouldn't arrive. Like, it just became really onerous to practice medicine in that setting. And then on top of that, now with the second kid, there was even a higher desire for autonomy and independence. It's like, how can I work smarter? Like, do I really need, I worked 5 days a week doing those 5 days a week.
It's hard to have two young children work 5 days a week.
Right. So I was like, can I work 3 days a week and still do this, be just as efficient? But there are so many systemic restraints or constraints that made that difficult. And so for me, the biggest push was, how can I be just as productive, but on my own terms, maintain efficiency, improve efficiency, and still have good work-life balance? And once I figured out that that's what I was missing, I mean, I was spending longer hours in clinic because everybody had huge tumors and I had one medical staff, I think just all of that. And I said, I feel like I had the experience at that time. And I think the confidence from talking to lots of people and also seeing how medicine is practiced to want to make that move, or at least inquire more into making that move. And so I did. I mean, there's this amazing, we talk about social media and technology. there's this amazing group of dermatologists on Facebook, the board certified dermatologists. There's an offshoot called Derm Startup, where residents can be on there.
Is it just like starting practices
Starting
or anything,
practices,
really?
It's really like starting practices, but anyone can join. So people who have the interest of joining a practice or starting a practice, it's called Derm Startup.
That's kind of cool, actually, yeah, because it's basically like if there's similar people like you, they're having these thoughts, maybe they don't even know how do you go find an office space, the logistics.
Right.
Like you use Zillow or Xylo, whatever, however you say it for at home.
Right.
What app do you look for? Because I had to ask my friends in private practice, like, how do you find a space? They're like, oh, you use this, So
like, do you need a leasing agent?
Do you
like,
lease?
Do you buy? Do you lease?
The specific. And then also the other piece, you figured out all of this. You found the one big piece for me that I always think about is I'm at a big organization. I like that word productivity because I like you. I'm like efficiency. Like I have 3 little kids. I want to get in, I want to get out. If I'm here, if I'm physically here, a patient should be seen. Like that's kind of my mentality. So we're productive, but at the same time, it's sort of it's a good thing because we have these really high negotiated rates. So for me, I'm kind of like, well, I could go in private practice, but that would lower. But I think you got around that by joining. So I'd love to ask a little bit about these, if that's okay, these specifics
of course.
Joining physicians groups.
Right. Of course. So when you got into private practice, 2 things have to happen. You have to be credentialed. And credentialed basically means you are, someone looks into insurance, like payer.
Yeah, like that. I would say to a person who had just had PANF do it for me. Seems exhausting. Like I know the website you have to do it. I know the stuff you have to upload into there. And I bet it's like pretty easy when you do it. But it seems not easy.
I think that's what I realized.
It's just do it.
I think that's what I realized. There's a lot of fear.
Yeah, there's like if you were able to take the USMLE, you can do this application.
You can figure it out.
You can do this application.
And so, like you see those people saying, oh, we can help you with credentialing. I'm like, well, if they can do it, I can do it, right? So it's maybe a matter of time. So I didn't know how laborious it was going to be, how time intensive.
How long was it?
So Medicare is the quickest to get credentialing. That's 45 days. So you have to plan in advance, right? Okay. So I decided so April, I found a space, I negotiated the lease and took on the lease April of 2020. It's been a year, so 2022, right? And then of course you have to do like, depending on the kind of space you take over. My space was not ready for a derm. It'd been owned by a plastic surgeon previously. Yeah. They had an operating room, a recovery room, not as many exam rooms. And for those, I needed more exam rooms. So I had to convert a lot of the office space into exam rooms, put in cabinets, etc., build a Mohs lab, etc. So I took on the space in April. I was looking to leave my job by that summer and start a practice by end of August, so a very short time.
That's amazing. You did a lot in a short amount of time.
But before you can credential, you have to have a space. You have to have an address.
So literally you need to be like in that space, then start getting credentialed.
It just has to be your address, your
maybe on the
office.
Lease. You just have to be on the lease.
You have to be on the lease. Or maybe thinking about being on. You have to know where you're going to be practicing because you are credentialed as both a physician as well as where your practice is located. Because some physicians have multiple practices, right? So you have to be credentialed at each.
So if you own a second office, you have to get re-credentialed
at that location. Yeah, exactly. So that's the first thing. And I mean, through derm, there's so much information. I listened to this podcast by a urologist called Private Practice Academy. And she basically like goes through that. It's on like wherever you do your podcast, right?
You need to do a few series of this.
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing because she was like, okay, this is what you need. First, you need this. Then you need this. Then you need this. You might want to think about this. So it just sort of lays it out. It's like private practice for dummies.
Yeah.
And so I just followed that. So first you need to credential, but before you could credential, you need a physical location. So that came first, found a space. And then once your credentialing process. So expect quickest is Medicare, which takes 45 days. I'm not going to name any bad payers, but expect about 6 months. I started the process in April and I opened August. And I think I was credentialed with everyone, but I think one major payer. So it wasn't bad. So expect between 3 to 6 months. I'd say average about 6 months.
And can you see patients in that time and do a delayed billing, or you just say no, don't come in?
You should say no.
I don't cover you right now.
Yeah. So I mean, you could be a non-participating physician, right? You're not participating with that network. I didn't. I think I was just worried that I was going to see. Actually, no, I did with some like the one payer that I wasn't credentialing was not complete. I just saw those patients and I said, we don't accept your insurance, but here, out of network fees and they're comparable, right?
Yeah, and they could send in a super bill if
you can send a super bill.
They can reimburse themselves.
Exactly. And for some of them, there was, I think, at least one payer that made the process, like the contract, effective, like it backdated the. So there's that.
There's
right?
things there.
But there are two processes. So one is credentialing. Credentialing basically means you are authorized as a physician to see patients. It has nothing to do with the contracts, right?
Yep.
And then once you do that, then there's contracting. Contracting means how much you're negotiating, how much you're going to get paid for your services.
Yeah, and that seems like
that's the tricky thing.
Yeah.
So that's where the IPAs come in. So IPAs stand for Independent Physician Association. So as you mentioned, when you're part of a large group or a hospital system, you have these great negotiated rates for being reimbursed for your services. And they have those rates because, of course, bargaining power. There are a lot of physicians. And if you have a major hospital or major group like Sutter, and that's like a major hospital in that area, you want whoever subscribes to your insurance to be able to have access to that medical provider. And so, but when you're a solo physician, a solo dermatologist, no one really cares about you. And so the rates they give you are just sort of like take it or leave it. So the rates you get are very different.
Negotiate.
You can't negotiate. And you could try. I mean, I tried. Like I listened to all these podcasts about negotiating with insurance payers, and I tried. And first of all, they didn't even give you the rates.
They don't want to engage. Do you feel like you're losing something out by being part of an IP, or it's just a good thing to be part of it? Like, do you pay into it?
Depends on where you are. So in the Bay Area, there are, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 major groups. And I called them up and I said, what do I have to do to join? And they're free.
Yeah. So do they do the billing and take a piece out, or is that kind of?
One of them does. So IPAs are a large group of physicians. Some of them have administrators that do a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. So they help with credentialing, and they've already had negotiated contract rates with a lot of these payers. So most of them, you just join. You basically tell them who you are, where your practice is going to be. They do that credentialing for you.
Okay.
So I really credentialed with Medicare, and I tried doing like individual credentialing with all of these other payers, and I ended up doing it twice. So I started my own, and once I joined an IPA, then they also credential for you.
Awesome.
As part of that IPA. So that's one benefit. They help you with the credentialing process. But when you credential with them, you're kind of limited to the payers that they have within that group, right? So it's advantageous to either do it yourself or join multiple IPAs, right? That's what I did. I looked to see like who are the biggest payers in the area, and I just joined whichever IPA had that insurance payer on its list. And so advantages, I mean, you do have that same bargaining power. Disadvantages, in some cases, they want you to submit your claims through them, which if you're doing the billing by yourself, that could be onerous. But if you already have like a third party doing your billing, they can just submit it for you. So it makes no difference. Another disadvantage is that some of them do take a cut. So they take a cut of whatever that negotiated rate is. You don't really see it. So say they've negotiated like, I don't know, 150% of Medicare, and that's the rate. Maybe they would have, and say they take like 3%. So they actually have negotiated a rate of like 153%. They take the 3%. They just tell you about the 150.
Okay.
So it's not.
So it kind of works out still.
It works out. It's still, the rates are still better than what I would get on my own.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're paying them. It's already like you don't pay any extra fees. It's just part of the contract.
This is like amazing. I just feel like you've helped so much just demystifying it. I think that's the key, because otherwise it just seems like this whole thing. Actually, we need to do multiple podcasts with you, literally laying out how to do it, like that we style. And the last question we always ask is the future of dermatology podcast.
Yeah.
What do you think? Where do you see the future of private practice? Do you feel a bit hopeful that more docs will go into private practice?
I hope so.
Or what do you can, or for yourself? Where do you see the future?
I mean, for myself, I had a lot of. I mean, when I left, I was like, oh man, like. Well, before I decided I was leaving, just the thought process leading to it, I'm like, am I going to regret this?
Yeah, transitions are hard.
Yeah, transitions are hard. Like it was a stable job, right? You have that stable income. You're not hustling to get referrals, right? So there's this like comfortable position, but there's, the desire for something else or something greater that you feel like it's within reach because you've already sort of like optimized this, and you're like, well, if I already conquered this, I could do that. I could take a stab at this, right? So that, I think that for me outweighed the fear of going solo. But then once I started, it was not tough. It's a different kind of hustle, right? So what I did as a moster is I met all the dermatologists and introduced myself. I joined a building that has a bunch of other physicians. And so I went around to all of those physicians.
Yeah.
And they've been in practice like 30, 40 years. And they were like, wow, young people don't start practices anymore.
Right. They're
Wow,
like,
we're
"Whoa,
so
what is
proud
this?"
of you. And they were like, oh, we will support you. So, I mean, the amount of...
that's amazing.
I got so much support from our older colleagues. It was actually I loved it. And so it motivated me to like go visit other people. And eventually I went to like I tried to go to as many primary care doctors in the city to just say, hey, I opened up a new Lowe's and dermatology practice. Yeah. And so that was actually really encouraging. The amount of support I got from the older, more seasoned physicians who were in private practice was actually very encouraging, and actually made me think, hey, I mean, if I can do this, anyone can, right?
So no, you are amazing though. But that's
no, but
it's very
if I can do it, anyone can, right? So I think as far as the future, I would love it. I think having multiple options when you finish training is really good.
Really great.
It's helpful. Sure, you could join academics, you could join a big group like Sutter or Kaiser, but I would love for people to also consider private practice. And the reason for that is
a viable option.
Yeah, a viable option. I mean, there are challenges though, right? So in this climate of like declining reimbursements, inflation, I mean, it costs so much just to run a practice.
Yeah.
There has to be some support for private practice docs. Otherwise, it just,
Yeah.
So joining an IPA to help get better rates is good. I mean, I would love if we started like a sort of like a derm specific IPA where all the derms banded together.
Maybe SF Derm should work on this.
I mean, that'd be amazing, where you just support your local private practice docs. So I think that especially
that's the next project we should work on together.
that'd be fun. Right?
We have the network.
Yeah,
We have
I
the
mean,
SF Derm network.
I think that would support private practice a lot. And then really just all the other private practice derms that I saw on the derm startup group, they're actually really encouraging. I mean, they do their build outs of their offices and post pictures, and that was so inspiring. I mean, I'm hopeful that private practice becomes a viable option as we deal with all of the inefficiencies in medicine, right?
Yeah.
So at least that's my hope.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I think we're not done with this. We need to do series section 2, 3. We need to literally have you lay out.
That'd be fun.
I mean, version. But thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.